Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larosiliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve Larosiliere. Today's guest is Tanner Rowley from Outer Woods in Austin, Texas. What's up, Tanner? How you doing?
I'm doing very well today. Thank you very much for having me, Steve.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. You do very talented. You're a very talented woodworker. Tell everybody, how'd you get started? What's the backstory?
The backstory is actually kind of interesting. I grew up not doing a whole lot of woodworking. I mean, a lot of functional stuff like a lot of kids do. I remember at one point, like we had a deck in our backyard. We had a family of possums living back there underneath the deck. And so like we had to rip up the deck and I learned, okay, here's what a saw is, here's what a drill is to put it back together. Definitely nothing like crazy aesthetic or anything. My parents weren't woodworkers, but just like functional stuff around the house. So I guess that was kind of my first introduction to it all, but definitely wasn't like born and raised on it. Didn't see this as what I'd be doing at this point in my life. Um, the interesting part, the interesting part is that I went to school at the University of Texas for biomedical engineering, um, and took very much a mechanical route in that industry. And I actually went in to go do orthopedic implants. So I was a product development engineer doing orthopedic implants. But what I learned was that orthopedic surgery, like when you're trying to do a joint replacement, it's actually pretty much just essentially carpentry. The tools that they use, like you'll have to forgive me if I don't know the names of certain things. I kind of just call it what, pardon me, there might be a helicopter flying over the shop right now. Um, yeah, but they would use tools that I use today in my own shop. And a lot of people would tell me that, like, yeah, these orthopedic surgeons, they're just carpenters. They're just not working with wood. They're working with bones. And I didn't really know it at the time, but I suppose looking back, that might have been like another little push towards this direction. But yeah, what really started happening is I wanted to strike out and go do something entrepreneurial. I wanted to go try to live my life more by design rather than default. And I wanted to build something that I could put all of my personality into. I could build up the brand to have it evoke the feelings that I wanted it to evoke. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't set a ceiling for myself for what my profession and what my occupation could be. So I moved on from a typical 9 to 5 to go that direction. But the interesting part is before that, I didn't go straight into woodworking. I went into financial planning for a year.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a little interesting because I I was kind of fed this narrative that it would be a very entrepreneurial endeavor to go do something like that. You got to build your own book of business, you got to set your own schedule, et cetera, et cetera. But what I didn't realize is that it was just pretty much cold, hard sales, again and again and again, cold calling, that sort of stuff. And so that started right at the beginning of the pandemic. And what I could tell you about that line of work is that when you're a financial planner and you're not doing very well, you have a lot of free time on your hands. And it was also right when the pandemic was starting. So again, wasn't seeing people, wasn't doing a whole lot. And I started making various things. I remember kind of the first thing that I ever made, and I'm sure that you've had other people like this on the podcast, but I saw one of the live edge epoxy tables or maybe serving board, something like that. And so I made my own one. And it was like this big, like literally you could serve olives on it, and that's about it. But
Yeah.
I kind of caught the bug at that point. Started making more of them, but then the final thing that happened before I got pushed into starting Outer Woods, I caught COVID about a year into it, and I was getting really fed up with financial planning. But I had to go live in a friend's garage um,
Mm.
for about 2 weeks. I was isolated in my friend's garage. He had like a cot, a bathroom, and then a lot of woodworking tools. And so I just started messing around with stuff. I just started to make like 3, 4, 5 pieces within a week, sent pictures to friends, and they said, "Hey, if you made one of those, I'd buy it." And again, at the time, I was getting really fed up with financial planning. I said, I think now's the time. Like, if I don't do it now, I don't know when I'm ever going to do it. And I kind of had this realization that, like, instead of trying to find a new job that I'm pretending to be something or changing who I am just to fit this job description. Like, let's start a business that is something I'm all in on. And then every added effort that I put into it is building my own dream rather than someone else's dream. And so, yeah, I came out of that garage. I came out of having COVID. I said, screw it. Let's go for it. Let's start Outer Woods. So that's kind of the backstory of how it all got going. But I don't know if that's typical of a lot of other people in this industry or something a little different.
It's what I appreciate about that story is obviously the journey, right? Like you
Yeah,
thought you were going to do something, then you did do something, and then it wasn't who you thought that you were going to be, but then it led you to some life circumstances that in which you were able to completely pour yourself and be yourself
totally.
and self express yourself. And honestly, like I'm on your Instagram and I can see that you are 110% yourself.
Yeah,
And honestly, what I appreciate about it is like uh you a lot of people are afraid to be themselves
totally.
because they're busy trying to like cater to who they want their ideal customer to be, or they're afraid because somebody when they were 12 years old told them that they couldn't do something, and to
Right.
be able to like to be yourself is honestly one of the most rewarding aspects of owning your own business. It doesn't always pay the best,
Yeah,
but if you value freedom and self-expression at your highest form, rather than the stability of a paycheck and a boss telling you when you need to take vacation or do
right.
work, like I appreciate the story. That was really cool. That was really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's
I mean, even on your look, even on your captions on your Instagram posts are like real. They're not like you put thought into them. You are communicating with your followers. Like you are literally telling them what you're thinking, and that's I do my best to do that as well. Where you want to talk to a particular person, or really sometimes it's about getting what's in your head out in writing,
totally.
right? So yeah, no, I appreciate that for sure.
It's it's interesting. So I don't know if you know this or you can tell this, but it's me. I am the business.
Yeah,
And what can happen is it can get pretty lonely. Like the
yeah,
entrepreneurial journey is a very lonely one, like inherently, even if you have a team,
yeah,
because very few people kind of understand what that actually entails.
yeah,
But then especially if you're kind of a solo entrepreneur, like it's a very, very lonely thing. So a lot of times I use social media and those captions, but then also like the work that I do, like that is my connection from a professional standpoint with the outside world. Like
yeah,
it's me in this shop. This is, and
yeah, for sure.
that's a good connection point. So I appreciate that. That's cool. I mean, I write those captions and I make those posts, not really knowing who's going to see it or what they're going to get by it. But
Yeah,
knowing that people like yourselves and then maybe just one person in like Connecticut or something that might read it and it might resonate with them and it might make a difference in their day. That's very cool to hear, and it's something that day to day I don't get to hear from people or understand. But every once in a while, like a conversation like this, when you hear it, you're like, oh, damn, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, starting a wood related business is not the easiest thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And because there's a lot of the I feel like the craftsmanship is like a small percentage compared to the actual grinding out of the work, right? Like if you think about like, oh, the design, you come up with a great design, and that's like this,
Such
and
a
then
small amount.
executing it is this much, and a lot of this much is really like low wage task. It's
It's hard. Yeah, man. It's like it's I the thing that I've been most shocked about is like the thing that has been extremely difficult is finding the consistency and the motivation to do the mundane
yeah,
and the repetitive things.
yeah,
Like it's physically like really really hard to do,
yeah,
um, and
yeah,
it's very interesting. Like uh, when you fantasize or kind of imagine what an entrepreneurial endeavor is going to look like, you might consume a lot of content from other people, like famous people, about, hey man, it's a grind, it's going to be hard, you're going to want to quit, like it's going to affect your social life, your personal life, your relationships, financial instability, all this sort of stuff. And you're like, yeah, that kind of sounds like you're going on a hero's journey. Like that's pretty badass.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
it's like when you actually get into it and you see how all those descriptors like
yeah,
get
yeah.
kind of laid over like your own life, and you see that playing out
Mhm.
with your parents, and you see that playing out with your friends or your hobbies or your finances, it carries a lot more weight than when you just see someone else on Instagram talking about it.
Yeah, no, it is very it's a humbling experience. And especially too, there's the feeling of like the client says yes, and then you're like, yes.
Yeah,
And
dude.
and then you get the check for the deposit. You're like, yes.
Yeah,
And then there's that moment you're like, oh shit, I gotta actually do
I
the
gotta do
I gotta do
it.
the work. And I
Yeah,
know, and then there's like this, and I mean I see that you do epoxy, and then you're like, oh man, I don't want to mess this up. Like
thousands
if
of
I get my
dollars in an epoxy
I get
pour.
my I get my calculations wrong, or like, you know, the off chance that like somehow your uh can you still see me?
Yeah, yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, the off chance that like you're like, I don't know, like you got a bad piece of wood and it'll break off, and there's just
Totally.
all these variables which are like literally the worst.
Dude, I've had bugs crawl out of like a hole in a piece of wood that's been drying for 5 years and like
Yeah,
crawl out and die in like crystal clear epoxy. And it's like there's a grub in my epoxy. And I'm like, I did everything right. I thought maybe. But yeah.
yeah, that's funny. So how did you start building this business? How did you get the word out? How did you start marketing?
Yeah, that's something that I'm still trying to focus in on and nail to this day. But to the way that it kind of when I went about things, the first thing I did when I started, I realized I wanted to do a lot of live edge stuff. That's originally what I was super, super excited about. And I'm still very excited about that. But obviously, there's classic woodworking that needs to be done as well.
Yeah,
And so I was like, okay, how do you go find live edge slabs? And when I was in college, I lived in a house with a few guys. And every winter, when we wanted to like throw fire in the fireplace, we'd go on Craigslist, and inevitably there'd be someone who's like, hey, we have a stump in our yard, it's free if you want to come get it. So I was like,
wow,
I don't know, I guess I'll go do that. And so I got on Craigslist looking for just like ads for logs and stumps in people's yards, and I was gonna like chainsaw them. I had no idea that wood needed to dry at this point in my
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
career. But no, fortuitously, someone on Craigslist probably knew that someone like me might be looking for that sort of stuff. And so he
Yeah.
made an ad for live edge slabs. And I found it when I was searching for logs. And so the first thing that I ever did, I just went to this. It was sketchy. It was out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it looked like you'd be in a horror movie, like if you went to this dude's lot where he had all
Yeah.
these slabs and machines and chainsaws. But I bought two mesquite slabs of wood for a
Yeah.
combined price of $300 and finished them up, did some epoxy in them, and then about a month or two later, I sold them combined for $600. And so I was like, okay, like I'll just do that again. Like I'll just do that again and again and
Yeah.
again and again. And so for probably like the first 6 months, maybe a year, I would just build up my portfolio of what I had done before.
Yeah.
Um, and I just made pieces that I thought were really cool, sold them on Facebook Marketplace. Now, as you know, probably from other Facebook Marketplace adventures, people aren't going there to find the nicest of nice stuff. They're looking for
Yeah. Yeah.
deals.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, and they always pay top dollar too.
oh yeah, yeah,
And they're always inquiring if it's still available as well.
totally.
Right.
Yeah, it was crazy because it was like I was putting 40 hours into a piece that I was selling for like $600, and then they'd get there and inevitably be like, "Would you do 550?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And so for a while, it was a real grind. And I was just chewing through the money that I had saved up back when I was an engineer.
Yeah.
And so, kind of at that point, I started realizing, like, okay, I need to get into a different market. I need to do custom work where people realize that they're going to be spending like custom dollars rather than just like finding something on Facebook Marketplace. And so I still use Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist to put out ads, but I would essentially say, like, I do custom woodworking. Instead of, hey, here's a piece, do you want this one? I'd say, like, this is what I do, here's some pieces that I've done, reach out, let's start talking.
Yeah.
um, and for about, yeah, another like, I don't know, 6 months, 3 quarters of a year, I was getting projects like that. um, and it was definitely better, but like when the dust was all settling, I was like looking back at it and I'm like, I'm still making like $8 an hour doing this. um, and so, every step of the way, it's like, okay, custom work seems to be really good, but how can we kind of get into that next echelon? And I had the realization that, like, all right, let's start working with some people that have already figured out how to do this, have already figured out how to get into those markets, and I can just kind of piggyback on the work that they've already done. And so I started doing some cold calls, some cold emails to places like interior design companies, um, different furnishing companies, really mostly just those two types of people. But I sent out a lot of stuff. And I guess a piece of advice I could give there, I don't know how many people listen to this who are fishermen or fisherwomen, but j- just throw a lot of lines in. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
always just give yourself like a whole bunch of opportunities so that any one day, one of your 50 opportunities that you've planted for yourself might come up. Like, you'd get lucky if you only gave yourself two opportunities and one of them worked out. But if you gave yourself 100 opportunities and two of them worked out, you're not lucky. Like, statistically, that's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 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 No,
yeah.
it's true. I mean, I think what you say is like is a very important part of entrepreneurship where everybody wants to figure out what's the magical solution. And like, I coach and mentor a lot of woodworkers, and literally it could be one person. I give two people the same advice, and for some reason, like, it works for one person and the other, and I'm like, all right, like, that other person needs to do other things, and I don't know whether it's the energy or the people or the mindset or just like whatever. They just need to, like, other people. One of the biggest lessons that I've, like, recently learned is that you can't model your business off of what you think other people have gone through. Like, you literally need to do your own thing. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to say, "Oh, that person has done this, I should do that." And it's like, no, like, you don't know what they went through, you don't know what tools they have, you don't know what skills they have, and like it's just kind of like you got to play your own game. And at the same time, like what you just said, I appreciate where you were like, you've got to drop lots of fishes in the lines, and hopefully one of them. And then once you start realizing what the patterns are, then you can zero in on what
Totally.
is actually working,
Yeah.
So that's cool. So when did you know that you were like, oh man, this is what I'm really gonna do? Was there a particular project?
I so I think I went through that journey before I even got into what I like before I even started Outer Woods. Like I had to answer those questions and go through those battles back when I was a product development engineer, back when I was a financial planner.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the financial planning company did for me, I mean, it was very entrepreneurial and like, it, kind of like the toxic hustle culture a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Like they teetered on like toxic hustle culture, but also like very positive motivation.
yeah,
And when
yeah,
you like overlaid that on me trying to do that job, it was really bad. But when I took those same principles and applied them to something that I was actually really stoked about, um,
yeah,
turns out that they had some like good rhetoric. And so one of the things that like I very much recommend to people, and I still have to do this almost every day. When you go for it, and this is what I did at the beginning when I said, all right, I'm starting Outer Woods, I had this phrase where it's like, I'm burning the boats. And I think it's a Viking thing where it's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
when they went to go do whatever the Vikings did,
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
landed and they burned the boats. And so it's like the only way we're getting off of here is if we do it.
We win if we win. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And so I didn't want to like start Outer Woods and be like, yeah, I'm gonna look for some other job opportunities or like, keep my feelers out for going back and being an engineer. Like that first project, I was pretty much all in. Um, and it was easy at that point because I was so naive about how hard it was going to be. And every point down the line, it's like I've been grateful for the work that I've already done, and I'm fortunate to still be naive about the work that's to come. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
like if I would have known what I had to go through between year 2 and year 3, year 1 Tanner wouldn't have been like, "Yeah, I can handle that." Like I'm just fortunate to like I have no idea what the next year is going to bring, and I'm sure there's some storms a brewing. I'm sure there are. Um, but there's never I don't know, there's never been a point since I've started it to where it was like I wasn't in it and then I was in it. Like it's always been since the beginning. I was very much in it. There's been plenty of times, and I hope that people really try to take this to heart. There have been so many times where I've wanted to quit. Like alone in the shop, it's August 13th in Texas, it's so hot. Like it's just blazing hot, things are going poorly. I'm exhausted. A project's in shambles. And it's like, I legitimately really want to quit. And I've had that happen like 2 years ago. And I'm so stoked that past Tanner was like, nah, man, let's keep going. Like, I don't know how, I don't know what the path is. Let's just keep going. Um, I mean, I probably had that moment within like the last 3 weeks where I really
Wow.
want to quit. Uh,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but I have to imagine that like everyone who makes it to some sort of peace in this entrepreneurial endeavor has
Hmm.
been through that version for themselves, and the ones that like you see and you're like, oh man, they're really crushing it, they've had to pay that due.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
I don't know if
yeah.
I even answered your question there,
No, you
Steve.
get. I mean, you get kicked in the teeth all the time, and
Yeah,
how you bounce back from that is really literally everything, right? Like how the lessons you learn. I mean, I honestly found that the biggest thing is community. Like the thing that's helped me is
damn,
like
yeah,
finding a group of people. And I mean, it's one of the things. Shameless plug for my Woodpreneur community is like to be able to like be around people that are doing the same things and like having the same struggles and like to
Yeah.
be able to get perspective. Like, well, my first business, I was a bit, it was just me and my business partner, but we were lonely. It was
Yeah.
lonely. And then the next time I did it, I was like, I'm not going to have a business partner, but then it was still lonely. And
Yeah.
then this time, my third business, I'm like, I'm surrounding myself with people that are crazy just like me. I'm
Yeah.
just like, and I was intentional about it. I was like, because I mean, it's no surprise that a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from anxiety and depression and like
Totally, man.
ADHD and like all of it, right? Just because like this, um, cool. All right, so this is the part of the podcast where I give you any marketing or business advice. So, is there anything that I can help you with? Any advice that you need for your business?
So I feel like I've been at this inflection point for years, where it's like how to kind of get it to the next level. Because what's been happening is it's been very steadily and slowly growing, like bigger, better projects. My rates that I'm able to charge are going up and up, like higher price tags on these projects, more responsibility. But it's like all of the revenue and the positives and the assets are growing at the same time. So is the anxiety, the stress, the like
Yeah,
overhead, the all that sort of stuff. And so I'm constantly trying to figure out like the only way right now that your boy makes money is if I'm in the shop grinding. And right now the business model that I have is totally contingent on how much I'm able to work and what my rate is that I'm able to charge for things. And
yeah,
so, I mean, for the longest time, and right now I'm really, really on it, is trying to figure out like, okay, what is it like what is that thing that is going to start scaling, like the revenue coming in, the money that Outer Woods is making, like how does that start scaling without me proportionally scaling up my stress and my labor that I'm having to physically put into it.
yeah,
And I mean, I think the two main ways that I could foresee that happening are number one, like a lot of shops do, like bigger name furniture brands do, like they hire people. And
yeah,
I mean, I've been toying with that for the longest time. The shop space is a little bit limited, but I could make it happen or get more shop space. But it's like, man, I still like it's. I struggle to trust myself with like a $15,000 conference table. Like, how am I going to trust someone that I've hired who has like no woodworking experience to jump in and immediately be an asset rather than
yeah,
like a liability for 6 months where I'm having to train them, take time away from me having to make things to train them when they
yeah,
might
yeah,
leave. And so, like, I know that that's a route is to hire people. No idea how to do that. But then I know another route is to try to figure out like, are there products, are there services that aren't necessarily so custom, that maybe are a little bit more reproducible, whether that is woodworking, whether that's something, maybe some sort of online asset or online product that is very much
yeah.
related to woodworking. But
Mhm.
then, yeah, how do you scale that? How do you establish that? So I think I apologize. I haven't given you a concise question, but
No, I understand. I understand your two questions. I mean,
yeah,
I understand where you're at, and I understand the two paths. And the question that I asked back to you is like, where do you want to be, right? Like,
right.
where do you ultimately see yourself? And I could answer both, right?
Okay,
Both scenarios that could potentially help you, but without putting you on the spot as to like where you want to be in
sure.
5 years. So the if the path is to grow your business, you absolutely need to bring on help. You
Right.
literally there's no the thing that so I'm starting a new venture in this wood space, and it's like I'm building like a like a like I'm building my own brand, right, in the wood space. And I could continue to build out this one business and hope that there's enough margin in this so that I can keep investing in that. But I don't have the time, because if I put all my efforts in this without doing that, like something's gonna crash.
Something's gonna go.
Something's gonna go.
Right.
And I've been learning how to borrow money. So I
Yeah.
borrowed money when I didn't need it, just to get into the habit of borrowing money and then paying it back based off of that. And so I realized in order for me to reach my goals, I need help.
Yeah.
And this could be in terms of money, it could mean partners, it could mean help. And so for you, I always tell woodpreneurs that if you don't you can't take a vacation, because if you're on vacation, you're
You're
not
not getting
making
paid.
any money. You're
Yeah.
not you getting paid. So if that's the route you want to go, I would literally start small, and I would start with outsourcing all of your admin stuff, your bookkeeping, your researching, your emails, your appointment settings. Just literally start there, because then that's the cheapest. You can pay a VA $5 to $7 an hour, and that's a good one. That's a good one, and it would save you 10 to 15 hours a week. What could you do with 10 to 15 hours a week? You
Right.
can go out and you can get a new client, and you
Right.
can add them to the queue. Right? That's the first level. The second level is find somebody to literally clean up your shop and sand. Period.
Yeah.
Right? You pay them $15 an hour, $12 to $15 an hour, whatever, or you pay them a day rate, and you know that that's how much it's going to cost, and you don't commit to forever. You commit to 2 days a week, because your shop really just needs to be cleaned once or twice a week, right?
Right. Right.
That's it, right? And then while they're there, you can teach them how to sand
Right.
if they don't know how to sand already. But sanding is literally the easiest thing that you can outsource, right?
Right.
The third level is you find somebody that has a little bit more skill. They've done their stuff in the past. You might be able to find them as a handyman, or an older retiree,
Yeah.
or a fireman, right? Firemen have some days on and off,
Right.
and you're looking to do something separate. Or you can look for a veteran, and then and maybe they have some skill, but they didn't successfully run their own business, and you have some stuff going on, and then you take the leverage and the time, the 10 to 15 hours that you're buying of sanding and cleaning and emails, and then you put that into getting one or two tables a month, right?
Right.
And then next, so that's the way that I would, if that's the path you want to go. The second path is okay, what is something repeatable that you can sell, whether it's a product, or whether it is, I don't know, I don't know, something for woodworkers, right?
Right.
Because I see there's there's a part of you that's a content creator, right? Building
Yeah.
community around your personality. That's completely another thing, but that's another side quest. And
Right.
my advice would be to build this and get that to the point where it's boom, 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 right? It's humming up into a certain level where you feel satisfied enough that you have options. Because the only way that you really can continue to build that brand, and whether it is with woodworkers or whatever, is that, or if you wanted to create a specialty product, right? Let's just say if it was I don't know, like a desk. I'm just saying, like a
Sure.
desk,
Sure. Sure.
and it's your own line of desks. Either way, you need to build your brand, and you need to build a community around that, and people need to know you and like you and trust you enough that they'll buy it all the time.
Right.
And that product development only happens when you have time to think. You don't have any time to think right now because you're busy doing. And the only way for you to have time to think is when you do the first part. So I think you can
Yeah.
achieve both, but that's what I would do. I would do first, I would literally, I would just start outsourcing some help to buy yourself, but and get into the habit of all right, I'm gonna buy myself 5 hours this week. What am I
Right.
gonna do with 5 hours? Pay somebody 5 hours. Go to Upwork, go to Fiverr, and find a virtual assistant, and literally write down all of the things that you don't want to do that is administrative, and then spend 2 to 3 hours documenting and then find somebody and then train them to do it. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Is, is that helpful?
No, that's extremely helpful. As I've been thinking about it, like even before what you just said, I kind of realized that like, yeah, the reason I'm not able to build up that second part, which is like, you know, I don't want to call it like fast furniture or anything like that, because I definitely still want to like really keep the authenticity and like the quality that I'm trying to build my brand around. But let's just say like all the stuff that is more repeatable, a little more stock.
Yeah.
Like I know that I want to build that, but I know that the troubles I've been having is like, okay, with what time are you building that? Like with what money are you
Exactly.
building that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because right
Like I
now
said,
the only way that I'm making money is if I make a very nice conference table, a dining table, and like I need that money to be able to reinvest into the repeatable stuff, but I can't get that money unless I'm making it, and it takes me as long as it takes me to make them. So yeah,
you,
I like that call. I like that advice.
you're never going to grow unless you buy yourself more time. There's
Yeah,
no, and woodworkers, and I'm saying this to everybody that's listening to this podcast, like woodworkers are notorious for being like super cheap with their like they don't value their time. Like
right.
they think they oh yeah, you know, I don't want to pay, $1,500 for a website. I could just build it myself. I'm like, okay, great. How long did that take you to
Right.
figure out how to do your hosting or whatever,
Totally.
right? Like, and what could have you done with that time? And so for you, I would just be super protective of your time.
Yeah.
And if you had literally, even if you had somebody in your shop that was like recording you working, that
Yeah.
would even be like, and imagine the next level, have somebody else editing your stuff.
Oh, dude,
Next
that's
level.
the dream.
And then you can just grow your brand even more. Like, but
Yeah.
you either way, it's you choose your own adventure, but bottom line, you just need to like bring on some extra help. You know what I mean?
Totally. No, you're 100% right. I think that I've come to that realization, and one bit of advice I could give to anyone who's not even where I am yet is like, uh, it's speaking from experience. It's terrifying to figure out how the hell I would like go about hiring the first person.
Yeah.
Like all the hoops you have to jump through for that. And so what I've started doing, and it's been monumental in freeing up time, is using services that larger shops or larger mills have figured out that
Yeah.
you haven't yet, or using their machinery. Like for instance, like when I go get wood planks from a fine lumber store, I have a jointer, I have a planer, I have a table saw, I have all the things that I need to mill that lumber, but I can pay them X rate or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then when
That's
I go get the lumber, instead of like rough cut, no idea how wide it is, no how
oh my
not
god. Yeah.
it's already milled, and I can go straight from the trailer onto a glue up, and I don't like, yeah, you pay $1,000 for a $10,000 project, but it saves you 30 hours of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So things like
But
that, like bringing it to, wide belt sanders that other shops have, like
yeah.
it's as if you're hiring someone without having to take on that new hire. Um,
Absolutely.
but no, you're totally right. I mean, time is time is so valuable, and
Time
that
is
would be the
super.
way to free more up.
Yeah, so the website's outerwoods.net, www.outerwoods.net. And then the Instagram is just outer_woods. Yeah, but doing more content, doing more social media, video creation, like I'm very excited about that, and there's a lot more to come. So that's a big focus right now. I appreciate it, Steve. Had a blast with you today.